Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to By the Bay. I'm your host, Dan Anchetta. Thrilled to be back with another exciting episode of our weekly podcast that you can find on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and this video on YouTube if you're watching us there. I have an amazing guest today, an old friend from, I think, junior high school. We go way back. Jeff Harold is here. Jeff is the founder, proprietor, owner, etc. of Harold Construction Company, doing high-end residential construction. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and go from there. So the conversation today is really about like this high-end, more than luxury, and you can kind of define what that looks like.
Yeah.
Construction, new build that you're doing, and that niche of construction that you found yourself in. So introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Harold Construction Company is a company I founded just recently after 10 plus years in the high-end residential construction space. We focus on the Napa, Sonoma, Marin markets. I say high end, but we kind of look at luxury properties.
Yeah. What is that scale? Like at what point does it cross the threshold and go into?
So like a good metric, and a metric that everybody kind of looks at, is dollar per square foot.
Okay.
What is the dollar per square foot for a build? I would say that, define high end residential construction anywhere from like the $850 to $1,400 a square foot. Price range. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that is.
I'm thinking like a 1x1 square.
Yep.
That's $1,400.
That's what you're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah. That's of conditioned space usually.
Right.
So not talking about like landscape and other kind of.
Okay. So what is like a normal, like everyday house?
Like
first
a production
time home,
build?
Like production build in my neighborhood, in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I would say those probably range anywhere from like $200 to $300 a square foot.
So this is like
on a small builder scale
like
of
4 to 8 times.
Yeah, and they all vary, right?
Right.
It's all kind of varied on, the design has a big impact on that, and the level of finishes have a big impact on that. That's why when everybody kind of says like, well, what's the dollar per square foot for this thing? It's a really hard thing to define because each project is different.
Right.
None of the projects are the same. That's kind of what makes it custom, right? So like the finishes and the level of finishes and the detailing and the architectural elements within the house change from each project.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Because no one wants, if you're spending that amount of money per square foot, you don't want someone that just like copy of someone else's thing. You want it to be your own thing that you've imagined, that you've put there. And I imagine that you're building these things, and you can tell us in kind of interesting locations, right? Like it has to be with an amazing view and this and a that. So maybe where you're actually positioning the home might be complicated in a way.
There like, for instance, we on my last company, we built this house on a 300-acre property, right?
Okay.
You could put it anywhere, but it's on the highest hill with the tightest access. That impacts the build cost overall, right?
Right. Getting stuff to and from.
Yeah.
Like how do you...
Sequencing of the construction. We had to build the pool first because we didn't have access through the house once we built the house, right? So we built the pool 2.5 years before we completed the house.
Amazing. So you're figuring out all that stuff and like, this is the location that we want to put this thing because it's all new construction. You're not doing remodel, you're doing ground up construction.
We also do remodels too.
Okay.
So in the new company, we're doing a lot of remodels because we're starting out. So the hope is to get into, new construction, but I actually do like the remodel and the reuse factor of all that. So we're working on an Eichler house down in Marin, in Terra Linda, and that one is in the same kind of vicinity of that price range.
Okay,
but it's on
existing
existing structure, but we're
taking it from the condition that it's in now and going super luxury.
Yeah, taking the slab out, redoing all of the framing, new roof, kind of the whole kit and caboodle. On that job. So that one's exciting. We just started demo on that one.
Wow. Congratulations. First job at the new...
First one, yeah.
At the new company.
Yeah.
That's super exciting.
Really exciting.
I want to talk about like that entrepreneurial moment that you had later in the show. So I'll try to remember to bring that up. But so we deal with a lot of first time home buyers, move up buyers, and even price points in the couple $1 million, purchase price. Mm-hmm. But we don't have a lot of exposure to the super high end residential, especially in the construction world. So this is kind of new for me, so you have to walk me through it. Where do these people come from? Are they local people that are building like dream houses? Are these outside people who are building second homes? What's the trend that you see in general?
So the trend in the past like 10 years has been money from tech. Tech coming in and kind of going into high desirable areas. Healdsburg has been a big hot place for us.
Okay.
What they're looking for is more of like, they want to be secluded, but also close to amenities, right? They want to be close to fine dining. They want to be close to
within a reasonable drive.
Yeah,
but
an Uber ride or not, right?
Right.
But like they don't want to be right downtown. They want to have that acreage and that secludedness of the home.
So they're finding rural properties that are zoned for having some residential element.
Yeah, and usually it's bringing infrastructure into the project too. So like there usually isn't roads or power or any of that. So you're kind of bringing all the infrastructure into the property as well.
No roads, no power, no septic,
raw land.
no nothing. It's just raw land. So you're taking everything from digging a well and putting in a septic system to how do you get the road out there and engineering that to make sure.
Right. Usually that's all planned with the consultant. So we'll have like a civil engineer.
Right.
We'll have an architect, a structural engineer, lighting designers. The room can get full real quick on the amount of consultants that
I guess I hadn't really thought about that, right? Because you have like all the engineers doing the soil and the civil work. Where do you position the home? Is the hillside strong enough to support the structure? Like all that other stuff. And then you have, lighting consultants and then the structural engineers, because I'm sure there's interesting architectural designs that require engineering work.
Lots of engineering work. And that usually comes to us in like a package in a bid set of drawings.
So you're getting involved.
That pre-planning is done before us.
So so the homeowner buys the site, they'd say, this is the spot, right? The least accessible place with the best view, typically, I'm sure. And then they have the build package done. They hire an architect, engineers, all that other stuff, and they put that out to bid.
Yep.
Typically, and that's when you get involved.
That's when I get involved. Okay. Yeah. And that process can be an involved process. That kind of design process can be a year or two to kind of get to that point where they have a solid set of documentation to do a bid set and a bid comparison. Right. So,
but by the time you're getting to it, it's close to being shovel ready or already is, where they've gone through the permitting process. They've figured out what type of things they need to be and where they're going to put the septic. All that other stuff's been figured out, and then you get involved, and then you general the whole thing and oversee the entire project from there.
Correct. Yeah, and we actually like to be involved if we can a little bit earlier in the pre-construction process, because that's where we can kind of add value to the project.
Sure.
We can kind of look at some of the constructability that they're kind of designing in and be like, hey, there might be a smarter way to achieve this at a better value. Because despite the amount of financial capital that these people have, what I've realized is they still value, right? Like it's not necessarily about cost; it's what this can be valued into the project.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's something that I like to do early. We have this process called value engineering, and a lot of contractors do, where we kind of go through the plans. You kind of see what the design intent is, and then what you can bring to that at kind of maybe more cost value to the project. So that's where the pre-construction comes in, and that's where we kind of see us building a relationship with the clients and building a relationship with the designers to kind of get in there. And
really understanding what their motivation is, what the dream is.
Why do you want to do this? What are you looking to achieve? Right. Like, what is this? And most of the time when you have those conversations, they're generational homes, right? The economics of a 1,400 square foot house to sell in a year isn't there, right?
Okay.
So like you're not going to turn around that house and get the value out of that house.
So these are like legacy building.
Correct.
Like this is the spot where the family retreats to. It's the weekend vacation retreat. Yeah. That type of thing.
And like maybe in 3 generations, then that value will come back out of that house.
That makes sense. Yeah. Now, do you see people building these things on spec as well?
There are people that do that. I think
with a profit motive, right? So they're like, I'm thinking after the recent fires here in the area, you have these, lots that are maybe burned and that sort of thing, and they're gonna, buy a lot, build it with the intent to then flip it and sell it.
I think that's a harder thing to achieve at that level.
Okay.
I think that especially in this area as well. I think the money is there to buy kind of a turnkey property like that. But when you're going out and trying to find that buyer for it, I think that's a harder thing to do at that level than it would be at.
You're not trying to sell this project at the end of the day.
No.
You're trying to make sure that the people who are building the home for are thrilled and love it, and it meets all of their dreams and desires of like what this home means to them in terms of their legacy and their family. And
like
stuff.
one house I just completed, it was actually really nice to hear that the client's father was in engineering in South Africa.
Okay.
So that's what he always wanted to build a house to kind of honor his father, right? So that was the legacy that he wanted to do. So we completed that for him, and he got like very emotional about it, and was like thrilled throughout the entire process because it kind of kept him closer to his dad.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right? So it's like there's those things, and I won't say that is the norm. I'd say that that's kind of an outlier of what happens in construction. Sometimes you're just more in like you're designing this house or building this house for this dream of what they have. So, a hard part for me originally in getting into this industry was like, what are we doing, right? Like we're spending a lot of money. Couldn't this money be better used elsewhere?
Sure.
And that was like kind of like a moral dilemma of like, well,
do you really need this?
Do you really need this? Is this your third home? And do you really need this third home? So then I switched my thinking of being like, well, this is like, these are microeconomies that they're producing. Like a $12 million house is employing a lot of people.
Right.
Like and then the ancillary effects of that for all the businesses that are, maybe supplying them food or like, all this other stuff. And that's kind of how I had to switch my mental thinking about, the industry and what we're providing. I mean, the reality is it doesn't like extend beyond the construction. Once the construction is done, that economy is stopped. But
well, I mean, yes and no.
I
mean, they're paying property tax on the property, like that helps the region. And it's not like they're taking a house away from somebody else to do this.
No.
Right? Like I would be upset if they're like, hey,
I bought 4 lots.
I bought these 4 lots that are like entry level starter homes. I'm going to build this massive thing on it. Like they're taking underutilized property and they're doing something different with it. But they're spending time here, they're shopping here, they're buying here, they're going to the local restaurants and wineries and like hiring people, and they've got to have
maintenance
and cleaning and all sorts of stuff that is employing. It's a whole microeconomy.
It is.
I'm kind of fine with it. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah. But
it's like
you have to
it's a different world, right? Yeah, but I think I see what you're saying. Like we're spending $1,400 a square foot on this house, right? And it has every amenity. And I actually want to know like what are the trends? Like what are they putting into the house that makes it that expensive? But I see how you'd have that dilemma, but I think that the point is like this is a different echelon of housing. It's not taking housing away from other people.
No.
And it's creating, value, property tax, other spending that goes into the local economy.
Yeah.
And okay, cool.
Yeah, cool.
Right. It's kind of nice to have super wealthy people in the area that are able to go buy and support nonprofits and do all the other stuff.
And they get into the community. Like, there was some with the local fire up in Healdsburg. They had a dinner, right? So they bought tables at the dinner, right? So that
great. Come on down. Bring your other rich friends and come support our nonprofits. And,
exactly.
Right, because they're coming here for a reason because they like the atmosphere. They want to be, like you said earlier, they want to be close in proximity to restaurants and things like that, and art galleries and whatever else. I don't even know what do rich people really do.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Can't ask me.
Yeah, but I mean, it's good. It spurs the economy. So I do want to go into like, what are you putting into these houses? Like, I think listeners and me, I think of like when I think of fancy houses, I think of a couple of things like infinity pools and like heated floors. But I'm like, they're not even scratching the surface.
Yeah, so that's like the starter kit.
Starter kit.
Yeah.
So like, what type of stuff goes into a super luxury house that's being the new construction? Like this is brand new. You can do it any way you want to. What are the trends that must be in?
Well, first and foremost, I'll say that a lot of the cost is attributed to the design, right? So achieving the design is where a lot of the costs go. So there are like trends. So infinity pools is kind of like that's definitely one. The last 2 houses we've done have been double-edged infinity pools. So like the long edge and the short edge are both infinity. So it's just vanishing. There's tech in homes. We all have tech now. There's a lot of kind of higher end tech that you can do in the home, audio visual, lighting controls, motorized shades that are all communicating on one device or multiple devices.
So this is like the smart home, but way above that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like your the Iron Man.
Yeah.
What is it, Jeeves, or I forget what he,
Jarvis.
Jarvis.
It's fine.
Yeah,
we'll nerd out on the MCU some other time.
Yeah. So it's not exactly that, but it's not Tony Stark, but it's close. Hidden speakers. So you have a full AV package, theater room, but you don't see a single speaker on the wall. No grill plates, that sort of stuff. Heated floors. That's kind of like a common radiant heat that's kind of throughout, and that's more of a comfort thing. A lot of the stuff behind the scenes does go for sustainability and kind of energy efficiency. And I'm not talking like LEED accreditation, right?
Okay.
I think that it's kind of moving into the principles of what that is. And it's not green products necessarily. It's like, how do we create a home that is healthy, like a healthy home?
What does that mean?
So a healthy home, what does that mean? So it's you have a mechanical system breathing in your house, right?
Sure.
So it's like the lungs of the house.
Right. Got to change those filters.
Got to change those filters. Yeah, you got to get
and put them in the right way. There's an arrow that tells you which way.
Yeah.
I've made that mistake.
Don't make that mistake. But indoor air quality is a big one, right? So there's this rating called ACH. It's kind of air change per hour, and it's kind of how tight of a construction of your house is, and you want to mechanically change that air. You don't want that air changing just by nature. So by thinking like kind of Swiss cheese in the house, right? You don't want holes in your house. So those are the details I'm talking about of like where construction costs can start getting expensive in that way. You don't necessarily see those things. It's not the gold-plated toilets that you might see in some places, but like it's kind of what makes these homes healthy and habitable for generations.
Okay.
And those are the things that clients don't see as important, but when you start talking about them and like what you need to do to achieve it, they get it. And they're like, yeah, of course I want indoor air quality that's healthy for my family. Who doesn't?
Right.
So and those are things that like aren't just a luxury of the wealthy. Like you can achieve those things in your own home.
Right.
And that's kind of where I see the industry going, and where we want to take it, like in healthy practices of how you build a house. So other kind of like nice to have, like luxury items that people have.
Yeah.
We talked about audio visual. That's a big one.
Right.
It's a big spend item, and it always is. Indoor, outdoor kind of areas are big. What we've seen too is, outdoor kitchens, pizza ovens, that sort of thing, but like lending itself to an indoor outdoor space.
People love that like door, that glass door that opens and like
pockets in,
or like folds up.
Multi-slide doors.
That's it. And it's like, are you inside or outside?
Yeah. Don't know.
Kind of both.
Yeah. And then it's like, how do you achieve that where it's cohesive, right? So it's like, you don't want to come over a threshold to
God forbid
a
threshold.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No.
So it's got to be flush with indoor outdoor. So those kind of details that are built into the design take a lot of thought and thoughtfulness to bring to life and achieve those details.
So it's like indoor out. So it kind of makes sense that you might be, Healdsburg area, a little warmer climate than kind of southern Sonoma County where we are. And so that pool makes a lot more sense, and indoor, outdoor pizza oven, you kind of have all that stuff.
Argentinian grills, we've put those in before.
Okay.
What else? Then there's the steam showers and that sort of stuff. But what I'm seeing too as a trend is like, instead of just having like one massive large house, we're seeing like ancillary buildings on the property. So you'll have a main house that's 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, right? Not ginormous that you would think in these houses, but then you have like ancillary buildings. You'll have a pool house that's close to the pool that has an outdoor kitchen to that. So now you have 2 kitchens in the house, right? 2 full kitchens. And then you'll have a guest house that also has a kitchen. And then you might have like a workout kind of area where they would have like a gym, and then it would also have like an office attached to that, because now they're working from these spaces.
Right.
And then it's just like, how do you utilize the property as well? I had a client that put in like his own trail system throughout his property, which I thought was genius, because you have 25 acres.
That's like that's a lot of space.
That's a lot of space.
Right.
But like he hired this company to come in and build trails throughout his property so he could enjoy it. But then that led to like, well, maybe we should put a little like reflective meditation hut over
While
here.
we're here, we can put this other thing.
Right.
It's a short walk down this path, and there's a thing that you can go to.
Right. So like I've seen a lot of that trend, and I kind of buy into that. I like that. Like let's utilize the property. Let's spread things out.
And I imagine there's like comfort level things like for the indoor outdoor like heaters that are like not just the ones you buy at Costco and put the propane tank into, right? They're probably like
there's an Infratech is
hidden and embedded and
sponsored right here. Yeah. No, Infratech they're infrared heaters that they use a lot. So you see them in restaurants and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. So,
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like they're like, I see how this project gets more and more expensive, right? Because it's like you don't want to have. You're gonna plumb that stuff in, so like hop happens automatically. You just flip a button and it goes. And
and then you're trying to future-proof stuff too. So we talk a lot about future-proofing because what we do now. We'll start this construction projects in 1 year, and then in 2.5 years we'll finish it. Well, tech and stuff changes through then. So like, how do you pre-plan for the next best thing? It's really hard to do, but it's cost-effective to do it during the build. In terms of like putting extra conduit in, putting extra plumbing lines.
Because you don't know what's gonna like.
You know what's gonna change.
What's gonna change? Maybe the, cabling you're putting in the walls doesn't work as efficiently anymore.
Right.
So you gotta
change that out. And how do you do that? And how do you do that effectively? So spending a couple $1,000 to do that now will save you tens, hundreds of thousands down the road.
Right.
So like those are the type of things that we do a lot. So solar and battery backup and energy storage is one too, and then also up in Healdsburg we've had some fires lately or in the past,
right?
And so how do you protect these properties? So that's kind of a big thing that's heavy on the mind, and there's kind of a few different areas where we've done that. One is in the design and the materiality that they're selecting on the house. So the last 2 houses I've done have been kind of covered in metal. In a very kind of thoughtful way. One was zinc and one was a product called Core 10, which is like a rusted steel.
Okay.
I think you probably saw that one.
I think I saw you do a weekly
Friday job walks. Yeah, so I do these Friday job walks.
And we'll make sure that we put your Instagram and stuff in the show notes so people can enjoy the tour of whatever the project is that you're working on.
See what it takes to kind of build these houses.
Yeah.
So then, in this other one, we put in a 55,000 gallon tank in a deluge system so that they could remotely deploy this sprinkler system on their house to help for fire defense. And then there's annual vegetation management like plans that they have to do as well. Those are both for insurance reasons,
right? And
it's just kind of for hopefully to prolong
and not necessarily take other resources away and like have people anyway. So that's really interesting because I guess one thing I didn't consider was if you're going into raw land, it's like there's wild vegetation and trees and stuff and like
animal life.
One of the issues that we're having in this area is that we are continuing to push into wildlands and like people want to live amongst the trees, which is really great until there's a forest fire, right? Mm-hmm. And so like how is there a balance between like where's the limit of where you should be able to build and what just should be left to be so that we don't have to worry about going in and saving, property and life.
Like why should we expend resources to save a property?
Yeah, I mean,
for somebody that chooses to live
push further out. Like there has to be somewhere there's a limit, right? So it's kind of interesting to hear, like to understand that that's being taken into consideration. Like we're remote, we're on 300 acres, we're like way out there, and so we're gonna build in a way that prevents like
hopefully helps
burning and like a 55,000 gallon. You can watch it on your camera and like press a button and it
goes. And then there's the vegetation management. Like those are just kind of prescribed measures,
like defensible space.
They
have to go.
Space. But and then they choose to go above and beyond that, right? And it's like that helps. That'll help the neighbor property, right? If anything happens, right? Because now they've cleared out all of the dead wood and vegetation that it would happen there. So in thoughtful ways, they're not just going and clear cutting things.
Sure, like one of the issues that we don't allow things to burn,
right?
Which then builds up too much fuel, and then when it does burn, it's a bigger burn, right. There's a problem. So forestry management, pretty important stuff. Yeah. So we kind of talked about like who's building these things. I think I have a good understanding of that. what they're putting into the houses. I imagine that the scope and scale of the build and the expense will depend on those factors, like what materials you're using, what fixtures you're using, and
Absolutely.
you know, how much you're importing from other places, and what the cost of, like, you know, of that material getting here on site. I totally understand that. Talk to me about this new business venture. I'm always fascinated by people who are entrepreneurial, you know, in prior careers and what I do now. You know, talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and business people. So, like, what happened in your life where you're like,
trajectory?
I'm gonna go and do this myself?
Yeah, I mean, as you've done, it's a scary endeavor to kind of go off on your own. But, you know, I've built up this kind of network and knowledge base of this industry where I felt like, you know, there was kind of twofold. There was one, it's always been a kind of a desire to, like, have my own business, and then kind of learning from goods and bads of what I've learned in the past and, like, how to improve upon processes. So kind of that was the leap moment. And, you know, I've teamed up with a buddy of mine, and he's a partner with me, and we kind of have, like, symbiotic relationship in terms of, like, I'm more of the business and like in sales aspect of things, and he's more of, like, in the field and construction operations. It's kind of how he came up. But yeah, I've been kind of doing this for 10 plus years, and I thought, you know, now's the time to do it.
If I'm ever going to do it,
now's the time.
Might as well do it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of jumping in. And
that's exciting. And I love that, you know, kind of journey of, like, hey, I'm going to learn from other people, and probably taking notes at a certain point, like, I probably would do this differently, or maybe we could improve this process by doing this, or, you know what, if this were my deal, I would twist this and do this a little bit differently.
The funny thing is, like, the things that kind of I didn't enjoy doing, you know, I now seem to enjoy.
Like what?
Just, you know, like some of the day-to-day, like, remedial stuff, like, you know, RFI processing, like request for information is what we call it. And kind of those tasks were they're not the fun, sexy part of it, but now I like it. It's weird. Like, there's a change in kind of the mental, you know, aspect of, hey, this is your own thing. Like, now you're enjoying it to do it. And that's been a cool kind of turn of events, because there was a burnout factor that I had probably about a year and a half ago of just, like, what am I doing with this? Like, where am I going? And then, like, just totally burnt out on these projects, because they're long. Like, I was, my last company that on my desk was the project we just finished. So it's like, that was 4.5 years of my life spent on one project. So it's like, that's a long time to be attributed to one thing. And those are relationships, like, that you're trying to keep going, and people get burnt out by it. So it was nice to kind of get refreshed in the space, right? And, like, that's a really cool thing.
When you're, like, entrepreneurial and self-employed, or you know, start your own venture, you don't realize that the amount of work that goes into it. Like, there's so much to consider.
There's lots of hats.
Yeah, right? Like,
lots of hats.
Everything, like, you have to make stuff happen. So you're solely responsible for finding the next job and for bidding it correctly and doing all that other stuff. But also, you have to think about your taxes and your cash flow and your progress payments and your collection and
how do you manage that?
How do you manage all that time? And then, you know, taking care of your clients and making sure, like, there's so much to it that people, until you do it, like, you just have there's no way to understand what it's like until you've put on that, you know, on that.
And then being a family man like yourself, right? Like, how do you balance?
It's a hard balance.
How do you balance all of that? How do you turn it off because you want to, like, bring it home, even though I'm currently working from home? But, like, that's kind of like the dichotomy of, like, well, I could keep going. Yeah, I could keep doing this.
Well, I think that's part of the maturity that probably you learned in that 10 years of working for someone else, right? Like, if you started,
I was 30 doing this,
probably would have not have that the awareness to have the boundary.
Right.
And I think there's days where the boundary gets blown through because it's like, I've got to do this thing. And like, I just can't, like, I'm obsessed with this and I have to finish it. I need your support to get that done.
Yeah.
But I think that's a maturity thing that there's no way to really know. And until you're a little older and you have a little bit more perspective on stuff, where you're like, hey, you know what? No one, like, everything's going to be fine if this happens tomorrow. And right now the need is that my 5-year-old needs my attention. Right.
And that's the other thing I saw with other companies, like good and bad, is like growth, right? Like, how do you do growth? Like, I'm an organic growth type of guy.
Yep.
Like, I'm not going to go push it just to push it. I'm not trying to build the biggest construction company in Sonoma County or the region. Like, I want to build quality, right? I want to pay attention. I want to be able to pay attention. That'll come and that'll grow naturally, but I'm not going to force that growth. And 'cause that's where I see people get overextended so much, is they force that, and then it becomes too big.
The ironic thing is that by doing it the right way, exponential growth will happen on its own.
Yeah.
Right. If you try to force the exponential growth, you might have early success, but it will dwindle and die. If you do business the right way for the right reasons, then your business will continue to multiply exponentially, because you'll attract the right type of people, and it will be more fun and more profitable, and a better time.
And then you see people,
a hard lesson to learn. Yeah. I've learned it before, but it's totally like that's 100% true and real. Like, you're doing business the right way for the right reasons, impacting lives and understanding, like taking care of people, clients, and your staff and subs. Do that just continue on that path, and good things happen.
Yeah. And it's like, I want to work on my business, not in my business. And I see that people, when they have that growth, they just continue to work in it.
Yeah.
And like, then you can't ever get out of that wheel.
And I think that's a really important distinction. Like, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs fail meaning their business goes out. They probably learned a lot, which is a success, but they don't end up being successful because they, it's like the person who's really great at baking pies, and everyone's like, you should bake pies. And they're like, yeah, everyone loves my pie. So they do that, but they don't realize that, like, baking pies is not the business.
Yeah.
Selling pies is the business. And then they wind up burning out and they're hating baking pies because they get away from the thing they loved, because the business part, which is the difficult, it's the sales, it's the management, it's the bookkeeping, it's all the stuff besides process improvements and all this other stuff. That's the draining hard part. And you have to understand that when you're in business, you have to oftentimes give up the working in the business and like swinging the hammer or baking the pie and let someone else do that, because your highest and best use as the owner entrepreneur is running the business and in making sure that the processes are being followed and that everything is being done.
And that's
correctly.
a really hard thing to give up that, right? Like, because especially when you're trying to build your business out of the quality, right? So if you're trying to, like, I don't want to say outsource your work, but like, it's essentially what you're doing, right? And like, so how do you keep tabs on keep that quality consistent across project to project?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, I'm lucky in the fact that my business partner is that guy, right? And like, he has that skill set, and he's construction operations, and he can keep eye on all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's
so
like
that's great.
Great sign that you've like been paying attention and learning, right? Because oftentimes we think that we could do it all, and you can't. And one of the things like I struggled with in my business was the hiring of the first assistant to like do the things in the background that no one knows is happening, but everyone thought it was me doing it. And my coach at the time was like, hey, here's the thing. You have to keep telling yourself, only do the things that only you can do. Only do the things that only you can do. If someone else can do it, let them do it. Let them.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of stuff that only you can do, right? You're the only Jeff Harold of Harold Construction.
Right.
Like, you're the face of the company. Like, no one can do that job besides you. Somebody else can, bid out a job, or they can do the bookkeeping, or they can pay the bills, or they can do lots of other things. And I think that's where most people wind up coming short on their entrepreneur. Like, they don't reach their full potential because they are obsessed with the task instead of the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Right.
Like, you want to go out and do that, but then you got to kind of let go of that. You got to be now. You got to put the business hat on. You got to figure out how to make it look seamless. Like, I'm still in it, right? Like, I'm still the branding and the quality is still the same, right? But now you have to lean on other people to be able to execute these things.
And I think like one thing I've learned is that it's good to know if you can be like the number one, like you could be the entrepreneur, the number one, or if you're better, number two.
Right.
Like, if you still have the entrepreneurial spirit, but you don't want to be the person, you want to be like the chief of staff to the person, right? Like, that's a perfectly fine role
to the
have.
regional manager.
Exactly, right. Nice Office reference there. We'll make sure we add a little GIF on that when it turns into micro content. But you know what I'm saying? Like, like, being a number one is hard, but it's okay to be a number two, and you need that like person that's actually on the job site doing the work. They're not less important. They just have a different role, but it enables you to focus on the stuff that makes the business run and getting the next job, right? And attracting the next client and building that
and building the relationships within trade partners
100%
is like absolute key, right? Like if I don't have good trade partners,
I bet you it's maddening, right? Like, if you have a bad sub on a job, like you could be crushing it and you hire the wrong sub, or the sub has a bad day, or the sub sends the wrong person to the job, and it can just sink the entire thing.
It derails things, and it's like screech the brakes. Here we go. Let's deal with this person or deal with this problem, and then try to get the momentum back and build that momentum. And it can be a real time suck and kind of energy suck out of the project, where you're just like, okay, I got this bad apple, like, and that happens. And that's kind of the one thing that I've learned on these high-end residential long lead time, long projects, is that, the relationships get strained, right? So like, me going forward in the business, like, even though I've done these, 4-year, 1,400 square foot, priced houses, like it's not exactly the model I'm going after anymore. Right. Like, those are nice to haves and those are great pictures on Instagram and things like that. But, I don't think that's really where I'm best suited any longer. I think having learned from those experiences lend me to kind of like the middle market, right? The $3 to $5 million builds, right? Those are really kind of where
that's like
we're positioning. That's where I'm positioning ourselves. I'm hoping to. Let's bring that learned experience from these larger projects and larger companies. Let's scale it down a little bit, and let's bring that quality to the projects that we're doing for almost everyday people. Like the project we're doing in Marin, the clients are moving back, and this is going to be their forever home. Their kids are graduating. And now they're moving back, and they want this house to be top notch, and it's a jewel box, and this is what they want. Well, I have the trade partners that we've used on these other ones. We're scaling it down a little bit to get there, but it demands that same level of quality. And I think that market's out there, and I think that market's a healthy market. I don't think it's going away either. Like, I think that we're insulated in this region for a number of factors. Like, we're in proximity to a lot of great things, a lot of wealth from Silicon Valley and tech, wherever that goes currently, who knows, but it's sticking around for a while, and finance as well. Also, we have really cool stuff. Like, we're 20 minutes from the ocean. We have great wine. We have great restaurants. Like, people are going to want to build those types of houses
for sure
if they can. And if they can afford it, then they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think the remodel avenue is pretty interesting. There's just like not enough there's not a lot of construction happening, but there's a lot of like older, historic, large, properties that need love.
Who are in those properties currently?
Right.
Like those, like there's going to be a shift too. Of like at some point they're not going to want these huge houses that they had when they had 3 kids, right?
Yeah.
That generation is going to downsize at some point.
I think it's exciting to think about. Like you said, it's a unique area, and it's cool that these older structures will kind of be given new life, and the look and feel of the historic home that was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right, can be sustained because it's been totally redone, and the next generations will still have that home in the future.
Yeah.
Right? Like that the economics here are okay with that, instead of like, let's bulldoze it and put up a McMansion in a box and do the whole thing.
Right.
Like, I like that there will be the historic charm and character, not just in like Petaluma, but like Healdsburg and all these other places. Like, that look and feel will be sustained for a long time because of the amount of wealth that's here.
Yeah,
and people are willing to, spend the money to revitalize and do that. So I think, what do you think like the future is going to be for you and your business? Is it going to be more so the remodel stuff, like 50-50, or?
I mean, probably 50-50. I'd see us continuing down that road of remodels and new construction. I think new construction lends itself well financially. I think remodels can be a lot more difficult because you don't know what you don't know what you don't know.
Like, on a very small scale, we learned that lesson with ours, and
I think everybody has.
It's
a lot of people have.
Man. If I would have known everything going in, maybe we would have made a different decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. We probably still would have done it, but it would have been nice to know.
See, that's the thing. Like, most people after the end of it, they still say that. Like, I probably still would have done it.
Yeah.
But hadn't gone into it with clear eyes, right? Like not this paled HGTV view of what it's going to be.
Well, just like you just don't know.
No.
Like everyone makes their best effort, but you start peeling back the onion. You're like, well, if we're going to do all of this stuff, you might as well fix this underlying problem. And to do that, it's going to cost X. But while you're there, you might as well fix 10 other things that need to happen on this older house.
Yeah.
And it balloons, and it's a wild process.
That's why contingencies are important.
Right?
Yeah. Owner contingency and a contractor contingency. I'll definitely say that. If you're ever doing a project, you have a construction contingency for errors and omissions that inevitably happen by the contractor or their trade partners, right? Like I didn't think that this room got tile in it. Well, it says it on the plans. That's not an owner problem. That's a contractor problem.
Right.
So that contractor needs to have contingency for that built into their budget. And then on the adverse side, the owner should also carry a contingency over on the overarching project.
100%. Because you get into it and
you're
going
to want something. Hey,
well,
I really like this
you know
tile,
what? Like,
right?
I mean, that's exactly
I really like it. It looks cool.
While we're here, I was thinking that we should do this. Like for us, one of the things we're replacing some windows because they were bad when they needed to be fixed. And I wasn't planning on doing all of them. But then I was like, well, we're going to paint the outside and the stucco guy has to come out here and patch it anyway. There's only 6 more windows. You might as well just do them all.
Just do it all.
And there's $5,000,
whatever that costs. Do you want to disrupt your life later on to do that? Like what's the value?
And you just do that time and time again.
Yeah.
And you wind up ballooning your project.
Yeah. But if you kind of pre-plan in that, you kind of think about like, okay, I know I'm going to have to do this, or like I have a budget of X. I'm going to put a little bit more on that budget just to make sure at the end of the day. I'm not going to tell.
The hard part is that's probably the only big project I'll ever do to that scale. And now I've learned all my lessons. So I would do it way more efficiently and like have that view having been through it once. But I don't think we'll ever do it again. So it's kind of a bummer. Because I wish if we were to do it again, I would have a completely different view on it and know how to shuffle things around a little bit.
And did you find the anxieties of the project too? Like
so much anxiety.
You're happy to get into it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, there's this lull in the project.
There was like probably 3 weeks in, I was like, we made a huge mistake.
Right.
We shouldn't have done this. But now it's too late because they've ripped everything out and now we are committed.
Yeah.
And
that's the other aspect of like the business is like I'm definitely like a relationship manager, like almost to the point of like a marriage counselor, because a lot of times you're having the husband and wife
disagree on everything,
and then like one is very emotional about it and one is like totally oblivious, and one's not spending the time that's needed on the project, and then there's conflict that inevitably happens. But what I try to lay out in the beginning of the kickoff meeting is like, look, everybody's happy right now. Like we're gonna do our best to maintain that, but there's gonna be ebbs and flows in this process. Like you're gonna see both like emotionally and just like visually, right? Like you're gonna see us demo the house in like 3 days, right? It's gonna be completely bare bones, and then it's gonna stay like that for like a really long time. But stuff's getting done, but you just don't see it on the daily. You don't know all the things that are going into it, and then we're like, we'll put the drywall up, and you'll be transformed, right? And then it's going to stay like that for like a really long time. And then the finishes and the pretty things are going to start going. And then you're going to be like, well, why can't I move in?
Yeah.
You're like, just give us a little bit more time.
It seems like the last like month, like 90% of the work happened. I know that's not true, but that's what it looked like.
That's where it comes together, right?
And fortunately, my wife and I were totally on the same page. We communicated through it. Like we knew what was good and bad, and we made decisions together. So that part was fine. I think the part where I felt anxious about it was just like, what is this going to cost? And like, do I feel like I'm getting the value out of this? Not necessarily like return on investment, but more so like,
am I making the right decision?
Am I making the right decision? I can do other things with these funds. Is this the right thing to be doing? And it's hard to know when you're not living in it and everything else. But you know, at the end, we've been in about a year and a half post construction, and it's great.
Yeah,
no complaints.
I mean, that's the other thing is like I also tell them like, hey, you're gonna at times not like me, right? But at the end of the day, my goal is that you invite me back to the house for the pool party and pizza party. That's all I care about.
Do you get invited?
Yeah, I did. The last 2 times I've gotten invited back, and it was like,
there you go.
I was telling my wife, I was like, this is just like the best experience. Like they're like so rewarding to like be there, seeing the family, kind of like the kids jumping in the pool, the pizza's being made.
And you're like, I remember when that was we're standing here going, we're not trying to get this crane in here, but we did it.
Exactly. And like those are the cool kind of special moments that kind of lean me like, okay, I'll do another one. Like you're like, oh, I don't know if I'll do it again. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's gear up. Let's go for another one. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Cool. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I think that that market, I'm like I said, totally unaware of it because most people who are doing that are paying cash. They've got like crazy
they're not lending
wealth. They're not coming to me for a loan. So it's very interesting to kind of get a view into that world of residential real estate that exists right here that we just don't get a lot of exposure to. So I appreciate you kind of showing us that. And we'll make sure we link up to you so people can see your job walks and see all of your other stuff. And if anyone needs to get a hold of you, they'll be able to get to you there. And yeah, man, appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.
London Ear Media.